welcome to the final review of this Fragments of Silicon session of reviews. Like, they don't really have a formal name for it. It's just the Fragments of Silicon reviews. It's functional and boring. Anyway, so up this time is Clash Force. We once again did an interview about this game on Wednesday. A bit of a jumble due to one of the guests not being able to be there, but I think we had enough insight there for it to be worthwhile. If you're interested in how this game got made, to check that out.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't viewed that interview yet or whatever, Clash Force is a retro-styled run-and-gun platform game. It's basically Mega Man meets Contra. Right, right down to the retro-styled graphics. If you're watching the footage, you can see that it looks, well, like a Nintendo game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know,
very 8-bit.
Yeah, it's a style that's very commonplace now.
Honestly, they're cheating 8-bit a little bit, but we'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not 1-to-1 8-bit. Like, that's actually kind of a rarity.
But it's very, very limited colors, big pixels, not many layers of shading.
Yeah, because actual like Nintendo games were a lot more limited than what you might be seeing here. Like, I don't think the NES. I'm not sure if the NES would have been able to handle something like Clash Force in actuality.
The SNES might have, but not the NES.
I'm thinking maybe it could have done it with like a special chip or something like that.
It depends. Like, not this bright of colors, but
anyway, so it's worth noting that this is one of our most common type of games, the mobile port to PC.
Which explains the pretty limited control options, as they said.
Yeah, it also explains the limited everything. The entire design of the game was based around a touch screen. And so this game is going to come off as a bit on the simple side, even for like a retro-styled platform game.
I mean, you got your move left, you got your move right, you got your shoot, you got your jump,
and that's about it. Because I am
the power-ups. The power-ups are Contra style. You get lots of power-ups to change your basic pew pew gun into different kinds of spread, and honestly, mostly there's like a wave beam, there's a spread beam, and there's a shorter ranged flamethrower spread thingy. And there's a 2 double shot thing too. That's a little bit anyway. But the way you get them is you pick them up from enemies that drop them. There's a specific kind of enemy usually, or from bonus stages between levels. And if you take a hit, you lose your power up. You can also collect shields that let you take a hit without taking a hit. But outside of the shield, you have 3 hit points. This is not a big problem necessarily, but bosses have 100 hit points.
And your shot does maybe like 1 or 2.
Your default shot does 1, and none of the other ones do much more than that. They do some more than that.
Yeah. Which gets into the big problem with this game, and that is, you're probably gonna quit over the bosses. Because
they're absolutely endurance matches and not necessarily the fun kind.
Yeah. I got up to the final boss and I just quit because it does the typical boss thing as it gets harder as the phase and goes into distinct phases as you do more damage. The problem is there's no power ups. There's nothing but your pistol if you die or if you lose it.
Yeah, you can
And-
get a
Yeah.
power up in the bonus. There's a bonus level between each stage. So you can get a power up before the first time you fight a boss. But once you get hit, there's no way for you to get any power ups for that boss basically ever again until you play the game in
Mhm.
entirety time.
So you're shooting the boss essentially 100 times, and if you
And some of
make,
these
like,
bosses have like movement patterns where they're pretty hard to hit with the basic shoots forward gun. Like they're fairly easy if you can maintain a spread shot for the entire fight, but
And there's also no way to lock your gun forward for this. So if you need
Yeah,
to
not all
take a
the fight.
back step to dodge, you're just doing less damage to the boss.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't think this would be too much of an issue, but
It can
Yeah.
lead to some frustration.
yeah, especially on the harder difficulty, because you might be going through the boss patterns to learn and master. Unfortunately,
Hmm.
my hand was starting to hurt because I had to hit the fucking fire button over and over again. And
Yeah, because there's
I'm
no
like,
auto fire in this either.
hmm it's not challenging so much as it's tedious. Like,
Hmm.
I quit out of boredom more than anything else because I'm just like, oh, good, I got to do this part again. And I really don't feel like doing that because I'm bored. I'm bored of it. I'm bored with it. Like, the boss encounters last entirely way too long for, what is essentially a mobile platform thing.
Yeah, and while they get like harder and they fire faster or move faster or whatever, they're not really terribly complex to be staring at for
Hmm.
more than a minute while you pump shots into them and dodge their return fire.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot to this game.
The stages are okay, mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The stages are okay. Like,
I mean, they're nothing groundbreaking, but they're not as
the whole setup is functional because
yeah. During the stages, there are like obstacles to do, and then like if you fail at an obstacle, there will often be another power up shortly afterwards, so that you can get a better gun again. And there are even healing hearts sometimes, but nothing in any of the boss fights drops anything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
yeah.
So the
there's
flow is better outside of the boss fights, is what I was saying. Is what I was trying to say.
Hmm.
Yeah, and this game is not going to take you very long to complete. I think, maybe an hour.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
unless you're terrible at it, but
Still, it's only about 20 levels, 5 worlds, and the
Uh-huh.
stages don't last very long, regardless.
yeah,
That's-
each world is like 3 stages and then a boss.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's all mobile game design, and it's meant to be very bite-sized.
Hmm.
And that is on very much on display. Like, they mentioned that Flash Force 2 is going to be a lot more complex because they're no longer shackled to a fucking touchscreen.
Yeah, and for the restrictions of like trying to play a game with a touchscreen, it could be way worse.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Like,
It could be the Mega Man export.
Yeah.
I thought we swore never to speak of that.
It's also worth noting that the actual port to the PC is fairly rock solid.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Mainly because everything seems to have been redone for PC.
Yeah,
Like,
like if you would have told me this was somebody's, college, video game course thing where they basically had to make a Mega Man style game, I'd believe you.
Hmm. That is to say, it doesn't feel like a mobile game on a PC game.
Yeah. It
No,
feels
it
like a
doesn't-
PC game that, oh, wait, this had a mobile version? What?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But like, it actually controls well with a controller. Like,
Mhm.
it doesn't feel sluggish. It doesn't feel off. It doesn't. Everything feels fine, which makes sense because this is a very amiable game to the platform. Probably even
Keyboard
more.
controls are also kind of okay if you're like used to playing Super Nintendo games on emulator.
Uh-huh. Or actual PC platform games.
Mhm.
Your Apogee platformers and your Commander Keens and such. Like, that also like there's no glaringly obvious UI elements that say, "Oh, hey, I was made for mobile first."
Yeah,
Like
maybe the title screen with its big buttons, but other than that, everything else is fine.
yeah, it's like I don't have to pretend swipe or pretend tap on
Mhm.
anything, which has been decidedly not the case in some of these other ports. So it pairs well with the platform. Also helps that there is no mobile version available anymore.
Mhm.
Hmm. For reasons that we went over in the interview.
Yeah. Um, Also worth noting, the character selection is once again cosmetic.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter which character you pick, you play the same. It's a bit,
Yeah, they're just different monster-looking things.
It's always unfortunate when that happens because why bother?
Yeah.
Like, no, seriously, why should I pick the scorpion over the platypus thing?
Because he has a cool tail, obviously.
Obviously.
Also, your hitbox is pretty on the nose. Like, there were a couple of times my head got grazed and I didn't actually take damage. I particularly noticed this because there's one boss who kind of does the surges from Mega Man X2 thing, where he just goes up and down shooting at you.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts out really easy to dodge, and then even later on, it's not too tough to judge which ones are like going to graze your head or feet.
Mhm. And let's see, the music is once again very retro-styled Mega Man chiptune fare.
Not as varied as a lot of Mega Man games are, it felt like.
Now, if I'm gonna be honest about it, this is the poor man's Mega Man / Contra game.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it felt like somebody's, college project as opposed to a retail release.
Yep. And I think that's about it, really. Like, there's not a whole lot to this game. I mean,
Doesn't mean it's bad, just mean there's not a whole lot to it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean,
This was
it's-
what the developer's first game.
Yeah, and a mobile game at that, so it's gonna have some limited scope. Like, there's a story here, but I've already forgotten what it was.
You can go find that from Wednesday's episode. Cough, cough.
Or you can look up elsewhere.
Hmm.
Like, ultimately, I'll say, well, a price. So the price is $5, which is about
Yeah,
what I.
that's not bad.
Yeah.
This is about what I would pay for Flash Force. Maybe a little over.
I've paid more for that on virtual console games of the similar variety.
Fair enough. So, it's like, and it was like originally $1.99 or 99 cents on mobile, but mobile version doesn't exist anymore.
Also, the mobile version was less full-featured than it is now on PC.
Hmm.
Adam, you still there?
Yeah, yeah. Just trying to think of anything else to say. Like, yeah, it's a really simple game. It's a really solid game, and it's a good price on Steam. Also worth noting, the soundtrack is also available for about $1. Little less if you go with the soundtrack edition.
Mhm.
Like, actually, like it's $5.98, so you're getting a cent discount. But it's really hard for this to go lower in price, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
At least,
Yeah, and I think we're looking forward to the sequel game that's supposed to be more full featured, because this does have some interesting stuff in it, but it feels like it's not. There could be a lot more.
Mhm.
it's being held back
Yeah.
by its original platform.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So hopefully the sequel will um, outshine this by a significant margin, because you know it's an okay game that's vying for greatness, and there's nothing inherently wrong with it, like mechanically and design wise and all that shit. It's fine, but that's about as far as it goes on the
Mhm.
best of days.
Hmm.
So that'll about do it, unless there are some final thoughts from you guys about Clash Force.
I'm good.
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered it. There's not a whole ton to talk about, but yeah, I would recommend checking it out,
So would I.
and definitely keep an eye out for the sequel to see if it's.
Yeah, we'll see if we don't have a review on that when it gets released, or around the time of release. So that'll about do it for this session. Um, the week ahead. So MSP is once again without a guest currently. Trying to rectify that situation, because
Mhm.
we don't have a guest, we don't have an MSP show, and I don't think Mac will be very pleased with that, because, well, the God's honest truth, we've had to cancel the last, what, 3 shows?
Yeah, hopefully we can find something to do one of these weeks.
So that's kind of concerning at this point. Plus, Mac, I think, will get very yelly if we don't have a person to interview on Wednesday. Right. With that aside, we do have a Tuesday interview currently scheduled. Uh, Hugh Hancock of Strange Company. They're a former machinima company that transitioned into making VR games.
That's an interesting trajectory.
Hmm. In fact, uh, this guy is apparently the co-founder of machinima.com. Yeah.
That sure is a machinima.
Hmm.
I mean, it was one of is I guess one of the top destinations for machinima. I honestly don't know, because
I'm just going based on they named it pretty much.
well, I'm not sure if that's where the name comes from or not. It's like a question for the ages. But they are working on virtual reality stuff now, and they sent me some material actually already. Like, been on the ball there. Like, sent me a trailer and 10 minutes of footage. So I'll get to that to you on Tuesday, Petty Fan. Um, you know, they've made a couple of demos so far, for I don't think they're a specific like they're developing specifically for the Vibe or the Oculus. At least not from what I've seen so far, but and they're not just doing VR games. They are doing like VR movies and other VR side things. But their main game that they're working on is a thing called Left Hand Path, which is a virtual reality RPG where it's based around casting, like actual movement of hands to display spells. Yeah, and that's I think that's scheduled for release next year. Like, anyway, and on our main show, hang on, we'll be having Ben Archer of Bishop Games. Mentioned they are currently working on a very atmospheric, very not exactly sure what the word is. Very distinct graphically 2D platformer called Lightfall. Currently slated for March of 2018. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to things, and I hope you are too. So, until next time, I wish you good gaming.